Good news, everybody! It turns out that the Rings of Power is not actually a Tolkien adaptation, because...
It's a token adaptation, isn't it?
It is a token adaptation, but they also don't actually have rights to anything that they're adapting other than the Lord of the Rings books, not the Silmarillion, not the other ones, just the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, which they're not going to adapt because there's already an adaptation and they're never going to stand up to it. So what's the point? Everyone's question. What is the point? Amazon, seriously. Anyway, before we go into any more of this, I just want to bring highlight to everybody in the audience that last week, John and Carl did an excellent premium hangout. So if you're a bronze tier member or above, you can check this out on our website, talking about why woke remakes are evil. It's very good. It's quite entertaining. I was in the chat memeing it up a little bit while it was going on, telling everybody that Carl's a vegetarian. Good fun.
True fake news.
It's very true fake news, and how he loves to pound down packets of Skittles in the office. You know how it goes. You've seen him do it. Don't lie to me. So check that out if you want some more in-depth discussion of other remakes alongside the Lord of the Remakes, the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, which isn't a remake, it's an adaptation / fan fiction at this point. But there's just a few things to go over as well before I go into any of that sort of details, which is that the promotion for the Rings of Power hasn't been going great. It's really not been going great. So they posted this like weird little promo teaser where you can see the title. The Lord of the Rings superfans review the Rings of Power official teaser trailer. And John, if you don't mind just scrolling down a little bit, because you've got the app that allows you to see likes and dislikes, 44,000 views. I think when I loaded this up earlier, it got to like 46,000 views. Only 132 likes, almost 10,000 dislikes.
Not going well.
Little bit of a ratio.
Why is it unlisted?
I wonder, shall we check out a little, two clips? I'm only going to play 2 clips from this because honestly, I don't feel like torturing you. You can probably find the link in the description and check this video out for yourself if you feel like radicalizing yourself against hipsters. To be perfectly, that's what Carl's been doing, watching this all day. Anyway, let's just play a bit of a clip so we can get a feel for the level of discourse going on here.
Every time I was like, okay, take a breath, something new would happen, and it was...
It's Middle-earth, there's never peace, right? If, like, Sauron is hot, I feel like people will be like, I can fix him.
Middle-earth had, like, a club.
Yo, this tune is banging!
Awestruck, mystified, and starstruck.
Wow.
Do these people here appear to you to be Tolkien superfans?
Token superfans.
Absolutely token superfans.
I can see the chat calling on that, and I agree.
Yeah, but let me just highlight something there. If Sauron is hot, people will want to fix him. Why is it that these types of people, leftists, because obviously they're all leftists, look at them, always identify with pure evil? Sauron, in the context of the universe, is the embodiment of evil, or as close as. He is the Dark Lord, but because he might be hot, I think I can fix him.
He might say trans rights.
That's the thing. If Freddy Krueger burst through someone's chest in Nightmare on Elm Street and said trans rights, these people will be going, thank you for killing those teen transphobes. Freddy Krueger, New Bay. And they've done it with the... Seriously, they do it with everyone. They did it with the Babadook. They did it with Pennywise the Clown from It. Most recently, they did it with Chucky, when I think in the most recent television series they did of him, he said something like, oh, I've got a non-binary kid. I'm not a monster. Of course I accept him. I'm sorry, you're a murderous voodoo doll? I don't care what your opinions on gender ideology are, but the left, they love it. They will forgive anything as long as you throw their slogans out there.
Sorry, I can see the chat be like, Sauron, the Lord of the Gays.
Well, what ring do you think he was talking about? But yeah,
a lot of those jokes.
Do these people strike you as fans of epic high fantasy? These, I always classify them, are the sorts of people who would happily show you that they own the books on their shelf and use it as decoration, but don't read it.
This is where the meme, what is it, like read another book? Remember when they were all obsessed with Harry Potter? And just was like, yes,
well,
this proves
that
wokeism
flipped
is
on a
right.
dime, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, you think they're looking for another one now? They're going to try and take Lord of the Rings and they're going to quote selectively bits from that and then try and make it. I don't know,
Oh, absolutely. There is more discussion, and I'll show you another clip in a moment. But I think the most damning condemnation of these people I could throw out there is that these are people who've probably only ever watched the theatrical editions.
There are theatrical editions of Lord of the Rings.
Yes, the non-extended editions. They were released in cinemas and they're like 2.5 hours
Oh,
long rather than 4 hours long.
I thought you meant on stage.
No!
What you meant on
Lord
Broadway?
of the Rings, the Broadway musical.
Yeah, apparently I don't know what a theatrical means.
Please don't do that. And just please, Amazon, don't do it. I know I got some excerpts from the comments as well, because you can see the quartering is down there, and there's people who've just put that these are people who are super fans of diversity and inclusion, not Tolkien. And someone who just quoted straight away, "There is no curse in Elvish, Entish, or the tongues of men for this treachery." So Tolkien fans representing right there. Let's play the next clip so we can see a little bit more of why this might have been taken down due to a bit of backlash.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. All right, 3 words to describe the Rings of Power teaser trailer. Go.
Okay. Breathtaking. I literally didn't breathe. Exhilarating and intriguing.
I did notice that you weren't breathing.
Yeah,
I was going to call first stage.
It was like I was trying, but every time I was like, okay, take a breath, something new would happen, and it was.
Literally like, and I was like, are you gonna fall off your chair? Please no.
What about you?
Oh, I would say like expansive, because
Yeah.
we're getting this like whole new look into the Second Age on screen, and it's gonna be so amazing. I also want to say representative, because we're getting like more diversity within this series. Like we're seeing our first black elf, we're seeing the first female dwarf, and I'm very looking forward to like looking at that. And then I guess like intriguing, because obviously this period of history within the Middle Earth is very rife with notions of the plot of like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and seeing how the Rings of Power are being forged.
Definitely more than 3 words. I'll take it. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the same room ever. You know, I'm starting to see what Carl was saying, some things that we can't broadcast about these people.
Are you beginning to see why?
Yeah.
Yes. Come over to the dark side. Yeah, I think the most... The
Story may be trash, but
Yeah.
at least there's a woman dwarf.
I'm so glad I get to torture you with this, and all of you out there as well. But really, has there ever been a more convincing argument for gatekeeping than if you don't, this will infect your fandom? This is what happened to comics. This is what's happening to mainstream films. This is what's happened to every major property that leftists have managed to get their hands on. So we need to keep gatekeeping.
Yep.
For all eternity. You can't give an inch or they will take a mile and then race swap all of your characters. And just some of the points, like I say, these people are not super fans. They're not actually excited about any of the Second Age stuff. Later on in the discussion, they only talk about how it all relates to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and the era and the Hobbit and the era that's set in. So everything that they are even tangentially interested in is related purely to how it fits into the later stories. They're not caring about the lore, the history, or the stories for their own sake. It's just, how will this tie into the Lord of the Rings? It's like, well, you should care about the story that they're going to tell, surely. But they don't, because I think deep down, they know it's going to suck. And that's why they need to swipe over the whole thing with just a nice veneer of diversity and inclusion.
But it's also the only thing they care about as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it written here. They only care about the superficial aesthetics of it. Nothing deeper. They don't care about the characters, themes, or lore. They only think about the parts that are cool.
How many neo-vaginas are there? I mean, unironically, that is the question I imagine them asking.
Please don't,
Do you imagine being in the room with these people? That's probably how they talk off camera as well.
Callum, you've no idea. They hired intimacy coaches for the production, which means only one thing. There will be sex and nudity.
What's an intimacy
in
coach?
this? Presumably somebody who tells you how to get naked in front of a set full of strangers.
Just take off your clothes. What do you need?
Callum just there, like, just strip. It's simple.
Sorry, oh my God, if you were the coach, what would you coach someone on? It'd just be like, well, you take off your shirt and then your trousers, and then you're pretty much there.
I don't know. I dare not theorize any further.
Does everyone in Hollywood never kissed a girl or something, and they've got to advise them how to do that?
I mean, I was going to say
you're
something
gonna make
really
another.
bad. I was going to make something really bad about Hollywood. Anyway,
Professional groomers, aren't I?
yes. I mean, how old was the girl? That's the question you got to ask in Hollywood. But the teaser trailer came out very recently. Once again, we can see there the ratio not looking good if you're hoping that this is going to be a hit.
Salutes in the chat to the dislikes.
I'm sure that this will actually probably get a decent amount of views when it drops, but 90% of it is likely to be hate views. If I watch it, that's what I'm going to be doing it for. And if you have seen the trailer, you'll understand that by now it doesn't really look like Lord of the Rings. It looks like every other piece of fantasy, throwaway garbage, trash media that's put out nowadays, with the same CGI backdrops and just like, oh, look at everybody running in fields, sword fighting. Here's Galadriel walking in front of a big explosion in full plate armor. That's accurate to the lore. This is what people watch Lord of the Rings for. Yeah, right.
I mean, I had exactly this feeling watching The Hobbit. I ended up walking out of the last movie because I was just like, I can't even stand this.
This will be
anymore.
worse than The Hobbit. The funny thing is, the Battle of the Five Armies, was it? In the book, The Hobbit, that's half a page. There's barely 3 paragraphs. They managed to stretch it out into 3 hours for a film. Now this is probably going to get multiple series because you know it's Amazon.
Yeah.
They've already dropped $250 million on the license alone.
It's going to be 6 movies or something.
Well, it's going to be like the equivalent of 6 8-hour-long movies that are going to be 90% battle scenes because Game of Thrones did that, and let's just be Game of Thrones again. Anyway, there's been a few publications talking about this as well. Vanity Fair coming out with the 10 burning questions about Amazon's The Rings of Power. My big question is just how bad will this be? And I don't think there is a quantifiable answer to that. I imagine there will be no depths to how terrible this will be. But here are some of the questions that they ask which have some rather revealing answers. So what exactly is the source material here? So what did Amazon buy? We have the rights solely to The Fellowship of Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King, The Appendices, and The Hobbit, says one of the showrunners, Payne. And that's it. We do not have the rights to The Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, The History of Middle-earth, or any of those other books, which are the books that detail the history of the Second Age, which is the era that this show is set in. So they don't actually have the right to adapt any of the source material for what they're supposedly adapting.
Wait, so is any of this even lore, or is it just fan fiction?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It's fan fiction. So that takes a huge chunk of lore off the table and has left Tolkien fans wondering how this duo plans to tell a Second Age story without access to those materials. There's a version of everything we need for the Second Age in the books that we do have the rights to, McKay, one of the showrunners, says. As long as we're painting within those lines and not egregiously contradicting something we don't have the rights to, there's a lot of leeway and room to dramatize and tell some of the best stories that Tolkien ever came up with, except he didn't, because you're not allowed to tell those stories. So you're telling your own stories. We took all these little clues and thought of them as stars in the sky, and then we connected to write the novel that Tolkien never wrote about the Second Age. So, if I'm to take that sentence literally, they're writing through astronomy. That's basically what they're doing. They're just picking any random crap and going, well, this may have been what Tolkien wanted, possibly.
Oh, come on. I mean, given all the diversity stuff, it's definitely a no.
No, exactly.
Big old no.
But yeah, this is just going to turn out to be incredibly expensive fan fiction. And one of the things that people noticed, once again, I already pointed it out, Galadriel is now a warrior woman, which in the lore, she never was. She's always been quite peaceful, looking after her forest. She's been involved in other stuff. I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings buff when it comes to the lore before, the events of the films and the books. But I know that she was never a warrior in that sense. But they addressed this. What's up with Warrior Galadriel? Is this in the books? Over the years, Tolkien adapters have had to get creative in order to include his female characters in the action. Liv Tyler's Arwen making a riverbank stand against the Nazgul in defense of Frodo, and the very existence of Evangeline Lilly's warrior elf Tauriel, all invented by Peter Jackson. Now, Tauriel is one thing. The Hobbits I classify as the Hobbit films I classify as completely non-canon because they took a 250-page book and extended it into 9 hours. And it was terrible, but purely because of the fact they had to come up with loads of original material that did not stand up to the classic material they were adapting. But Liv Tyler's Arwen in the original trilogy, making a stand against the Nazgul, yeah, that may have been a change, but that's like, what, 3 minutes? That whole scene? This is not changing the entire backstory and history of a character that we already know about. But Ewan's I mispronounced that, No Living Man Am I showdown with the Witch King of Angmar in The Return of the King is straight from the books and shows that Tolkien was at least somewhat interested in women who pick up swords. And then they talk about Galadriel. She's full of piss and vinegar, and she's got a sword that's broken because she's killed so many orcs, McKay says. This young, hot-headed Galadriel, how did she ever become that elder statesman? And this is set...
That's a good question.
That is a good question. How did they, Mr. McKay? Honestly, I mean, the funny thing... Yeah, this is the image that people have been annoyed about. The funny thing is that young and hot-headed, Galadriel, by the time of the end of the books, is about 8,000 something or other years old. So here, this young and hot-headed woman is about 3,000 to 4,000 years old, roughly. So you'd be still so young and fiery and hot-headed after only 3,000 years to mature and develop, wouldn't you?
I don't know what that is in elf years and human years.
I'm pretty sure, other than a few discrepancies with
that,
how
like
long
50
the
or something
months-
then?
I mean, does it really matter? I mean, she still had 3,000 to 4,000 years to
sure,
just
but
exist.
Trying to convert it into human years for like some relevance, so this still doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know, but yeah. So they're taking they've gone. Well, they made some minor changes here, added some big changes here in the Hobbits that nobody liked. So why don't we just desecrate the lore and for the fandom? Who's going to be annoyed at that? Everyone was annoyed at that. And the funny thing is, you can see how Tolkien himself reacted to bad adaptations in the past. We've got some articles from Bounding into Comics talking about how Tolkien torched a Lord of the Rings film treatment for being treated carelessly, recklessly, and showing no evident signs of any appreciation for what it's about. Tolkien, the creator of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, torched a film treatment for an adaptation of the books back in 1958. In a letter to Forrest J. Ackerman, Tolkien did not hold back his criticism of the film treatment. If Mr. Zimmerman, who I assume was the person trying to get it started, and or others do so, they may be irritated or aggrieved by the tone of my many criticisms. If so, I'm sorry. But I would ask them to make an effort of imagination sufficient to understand the irritation and, on occasion, the resentment of an author who finds increasingly as he proceeds his work treated as if it would seem carelessly in general, in places recklessly, and with no evident signs of any appreciation of what it's all about.
Jesus, what did they do to it?
I don't know, but it's not any... I can make a good guess that none of it is anywhere near as bad as what they're doing with the Rings of Power.
No.
Yeah, so Tolkien hates you. Tolkien is rolling in his grave. If he could see what you're doing to the series, he would condemn you and resent you greatly. But one of the things that everybody is aware of is that after Tolkien died, the stewardship of the series went into his son Christopher's hands. Christopher Tolkien, who died about 2 years ago now, quite sadly. He was really old. He was about 95. But I think his stewardship of the series, of the franchise, really sort of earned him the title of one of the best sons to have ever lived, because he did not let anybody mess with it while he was, in charge, other than potentially stuff to do with The Hobbit. But I assume that after he saw what Peter Jackson did with the originals, that he was, giving him a bit of a benefit of the doubt. He probably regretted that a little bit. But the Amazon only got access to the rights after Christopher stepped down, because he was like, no, you're not going to touch it, because I bet he knew what they were going to do to it if they got hold of it. And I'm sure
Star Wars.
Yes, his worries were very founded. I've got this article up from Inverse saying, for decades, Tolkien's library had been carefully guarded and treasured by his son, Christopher Tolkien. Notoriously protective of his father's work, Christopher had barred others from adapting Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and associated stories time and time again. Amazon announced Monday that this is back from 2017 when the original announcements were made, $250 million had nabbed the rights to make a Lord of the Rings prequel television series. And now we have an inkling as to what is going on. The popular Lord of the Rings fan site, the Oneringnet, reported on Wednesday that Christopher Tolkien stepped down as the director of the Tolkien estate on August 31. So it was only after he stepped down that they managed to get their grubby little paws on it. But you may think, oh God, what are the Tolkien family doing? They're not protecting it. But even then, it seems that even the people in the family who aren't as protective of their of J.R.R. Tolkien's legacy as Christopher was, still didn't let them do anything with the main body of material. This Guardian article, also from a few years ago, was talking about how a J.R.R. Tolkien expert working on Amazon's forthcoming multi-series adaptation of The Lord of the Rings claimed that the retail and streaming giant has been refused permission by the estate to use the bulk of the book's plot. Tolkien scholar Tom Shippey, who is supervising the show's development, told German fan site that the estate has refused to allow the series to be set during any period other than the Second Age of Middle-earth. So after selling the rights to the very specific books, they were still like, but you can't adapt those. You're going to have to adapt to this big blob of grey area because then you can do what you want because we know you're going to ruin it. So write your own story and ruin that. Keep it away from what our dad is mainly known for, which I still don't like them making the show, but it was probably a better idea than just going make your own version of Lord of the Rings.
I mean, if nothing else, it just proves how vastly corrupt people like Amazon are. I mean, you basically give them a trap to walk into.
And they happily did so. Yeah. Aren't we so glad about the diversity and representation?
I can fuck Saruman now.
No. Why do they always want to identify? Why do they always want to sleep with the evil people? Literally, the Dark Lord, Christ. Anyway, and it's not just the Amazon and other people who've been getting in trouble. Some of the fan sites have been going mental as well. The Oneringnet, a supposed super fan site, has been trying to ban people off the website and calling them racist, and then saying that they're also still a safe haven for debate.
Yeah, this exactly. This is what these communities were always about. You know what gaming was always about? Calling each other racist and banning someone for racism. No, it was about games.
And calling other people racist names. It was only part of it.
It was about Xbox Live Chat. That's what it was.
That's where all the good stuff happened. So the Lord of the Rings fan site, the Oneringnet, has quickly spiraled into an outlet plugging woke identity politics and has accused Tolkien of being woke. Tolkien, wasn't he a famous Catholic? Or was that, I think that might have been C.S. Lewis, but Tolkien was not woke. I think we can all agree on that.
Didn't exist until like the 90s. That's a philosophical idea, so it doesn't make any sense.
So they're now attacking Lord of the Rings fans by calling them racist. In an article written by a contributor named Earl, titled The Rings of Power and the Issue of Race, which was not an issue before Amazon decided to force it into Tolkien's lore, making it an issue. The website implies that Lord of the Rings fans are racist due to their critical reaction to the casting of Sophia Numvet as the Dwarven Princess and Ismael Cruz Cordova's casting as Arondir. The article makes it very clear this attack on Lord of the Rings fans is made in bad faith, as Earl writes. While most of the cast, such as these people, were generally enthusiastically well received, the reactions to the rest of the diverse cast was rather dismaying, shocking even, and even those might be understatements. Who'd have thought that trying to change something that was literally described as a mythology for England and filling it with all demonstrably not English people would upset people? I never saw that one coming. They made it very clear that they took issue... a different website, the wrongring.com, which is different to the onering.net. This is just fandoms being very confusing. Made it very clear they took issue with Galadriel, writing on Twitter, Galadriel is not a commander of the Northern armies. Galadriel is hunting down the remnants of their collaborators who claimed the life of her brother. So you can see there that the discourse is not strictly defined purely by the racial stuff. There's plenty of other things that we hate about these trailers, the onering.net. You don't have to just bring it all into race. I'm sure everything else will be terrible as well. If it's actually well written, I can see people potentially putting the whole race stuff aside and being like, well, at least it's a well-written show. But it won't be.
I mean, evidently.
Because obviously it won't be. These things never are because they're focusing purely on the racial diversity aspects and how they can change all of the narrative and lore so they can fit stuff in so that they can make it more cool, not, honest, heartfelt, or accurate to the source material. In a subsequent tweet, they noted 9, Tolkien, looking, tell me when you find the part where Galadriel leads her armies into battle. Okay, so they're just saying, well, this obviously didn't happen in the narrative. They also took issue with the depiction of Elrond, tweeting there's so much more, compressing the storyline into a few years rather than the centuries needed, adding new forbidden romances. The show's being run by J.J. Abrams acolytes. Elrond is a canny young architect and politician, which is not accurate to the lore either. And then it goes on through a bit more of the OneRing.net article and concludes, as Earl concludes his article, he then claims, debate, discussion, and interpretation has always been welcomed at the OneRing.net. This is what has kept us going for 2 decades. But racism, bigotry, and intolerance simply have no place in the discourse. So to all those Tolkien fans out there who may be feeling sidelined, belittled, marginalized, or discriminated against for various reasons, not just for your race, also for your terrible taste.
Discriminated against and marginalized. Hello, like the guys who enjoy the source material
we're being marginalized. You're right. We're the minorities.
by definition, you dum-dums.
Yep. Please know that the OneRing.net is your safe haven. So if you are one of those insufferable university students from the teaser promo thing discussion that we saw earlier, the OneRing.net has got your back. For the rest of us, leave us alone. Stay away from our franchises, please.
If you enjoyed that section from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Contemplation series that we have going up at the weekend. This is Josh's little baby, and as you can see, this is on nostalgia and whether or not it's useful. And if you'd like to find out what else Josh is up to, you can follow him on Getter at Josh_firm on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.